Hi, this is Helena, and today I'm gonna briefly present my design concept for the play Orlando. So as I start to read this play, it gives me an impression of the play being a combination of all these historical facts and almost surreal imaginations, which I feel like work exactly as our memory, that they are sometimes inaccurate, or let's say they are always not accurate, and we always exaggerate some of those really important details, and things start to accumulate and become the new memories. So I would like to keep this quality of memory presented as if the whole play is Orlando's memory, and kind of reflect on how people are experiencing their lives subjectively, especially for Orlando. So moving on to the stage, what is essentially on the ground is this central rostra, which has this lift in it and can serve as a trap. So with this frame in front of it, it defines an area that's kind of private and intimate. It can be Orlando's inner space for herself. It could also be the queen's bedroom. It could be when Orlando is being with Sasha or with Shelmerdine, and they are feeling the intimacy in between them. To represent the idea of memory, I would use all these layers of fabric, all in white, but with different textures and different transparency, and they will be gradually layering up, blocking each other, but occasionally you can still see small details being revealed, as if they're just your faded memories, that you can't see the whole picture, but you can still remember those smaller pieces. As the layers build up, there's the potential for the actors to play with these fabric pieces. For example, they can use the fabric to create different patterns and thus represent different locations. I guess this design really needs to work closely with lighting. So, for example, in the very beginning of the play, the very first layer of Orlando's memory would be sitting under this oak tree and being in the Elizabethan era. So I've got this lace collar from the period, and hopefully this texture, this pattern can produce a shadow that's kind of like sitting under the foliage of the tree. And then we have this layer of memory from the Great Frost, for which I've been looking at the pictures of icicles, and interestingly, this pattern of the frost and that of the feather looks quite alike. So I'm thinking of using this material for this layer of memory. As the play goes towards the end, all these memories seems to become a burden for Orlando to living in the modern society, where she is kind of lost. And so all these layers of fabric will starting to block the way, and only leaving the apron for acting. It's only after seeing the dead queen and Shelmerdine again that Orlando is ready to live in the present, that she could not be trapped by all these past memories anymore. So all these later layers of the memories or the fabric will be gradually flied out, revealing the very initial layer and leaving the rest of the stage clean, as if Orlando is able to set out again. And in terms of the lighting, I'll be trying to replicate this linear form of the foggy urban landscape. Now moving towards the figure, I'll still be using the similar strategy of taking the key elements and exaggerate them. And I want the costume to be really bold and almost avant-garde. And I was thinking of body adornment jewelry somehow. Now for the chorus, they are not yet a part of this bold movement. So there will be about 10 people playing the chorus, and sometimes they'll need to become other characters. All these chorus will be wearing neat and tight clothes such as pants and bodies, keep them unisex and anonymous. And on top of that, they'll be wearing exoskeleton or corset so that they can add on different modules quickly and transform quickly. The way the chorus act in the play is kind of like a physical theater, that they don't speak that much, but they are playing important roles. They can be a part of the set by stretching the fabric and creating different shapes, And they can be the random characters from the scenes, and they can also become Orlando's inner voice, which I'll be talking a bit more in sound. Now moving towards the other key characters. As I said, they will be bold and they will be colorful, so they are contrasting with the set, with the wet fabric. When the character is standing on the stage, those wet fabrics can take the color from the costume, and only when the fabric has the colors is sort of meaningful. Otherwise, they are just a part of the faded memory. Okay, so for the Orlando, there are 3 examples of his or her costume. In Elizabethan era, there's all these rough colors all over her, and in the 18th, she's starting to fill in the footing-girl, and in the 19th, there will be all these bubbles and trinkets through the texture. For the queen, we know that she's been wearing lace collar and leg of mutton sleeves from her portraits, and here's the Orlando's impression of her. So combining the facts and imaginations, she has a huge silhouette, but the figure is actually almost a skeleton. According to the text, Sasha has been wrapped in this great fur coat, and for Orlando, she's such a lively woman who's completely different from all the other people. So she'll be having this kind of fluffy costume that can move along with her to emphasize her liveliness. And for the Marmaduke Shelmardine, I've been looking at the historically accurate tailcoats from the 19th century, but because this is an individual that's just like Orlando is not defined by his gender, so I would like to have a bit more feminine elements or textures added to the costume. In terms of the sound, the play will have mostly human voice. I've been looking at the speech voice and spoken singing as vocal techniques. It's a really efficient way to communicate the emotional undercurrent, and I would say it also works well with Virginia's poetic language. And here's an example of that.
Den Wein man mit Augen trinkt, gießt nachts der Mond in Wogen nieder. Und eine Springflut überschwemmt den stillen Horizont.
For the chorus, they are more like an a cappella band, and they also make some live noise. And so here's the example of this physical theater that I've been mentioned, and it's really good at creating this atmosphere for the play. And here I've created a short piece of sound for the scene when Orlando is being kissed by the queen without knowing it. So they are the heartbeat for Orlando, and they are also the gasp as if they are all witness of this scene. So the chorus can have really fluid identities at times. And you may notice there's also this electronic bass component at the background of this piece. So occasionally I'll have this electronic sound components just to represent how time is flying as what we usually see that is non-stoppable. And it also contradicts with how Orlando is experiencing her time. Most of these electronic components will be monotonous or minimalist, just like how the clocks tick or the bells run. This is pretty much it for my presentation, and thanks for listening.